I've been invited by the Weinzweig, Wachschlag, etc. family to speak in honor on behalf of Ner Tamid. And thank you to Lori and the entire family for asking me to speak about Izzie. It's a tremendous honor. I have known Izzie and Lila my entire life. And I think it's safe to say that I am the person you see standing before you today because of them. Izzie and Lila joined Ner Tamid after they got married, which means before Carmi and I were born. And it was the only congregation they ever belonged to. Lila and Izzie believed very strongly in Jewish education. They were instrumental in the founding of Solomon Schechter Day School, and that is where my earliest memories of them begin, since Carmi and I met in that kindergarten class in the fall of 1969. The 1969-70 school year was also the first year of the first graduating class in school history. There are a couple of notable people in that first graduating class, two of whom are here today, R.A. Weinzweig and David Shapiro. The school board president that year was Izzie Weinzweig, and this is what he wrote to that first class. To the graduating class, I know each of you personally, and I have watched most of you grow up and mature into adulthood. If the Solomon Schechter Day School was only a small factor in your development, and I believe it was a large one, then all of the considerable effort that went into the building and developing the school was worthwhile. You are children of whom any school could be proud. It is never easy to be the first class in a school such as this. So much is expected of you. So much of what you do is a precedent for later classes. You are the trailblazers of a path that others will follow, and it is quite a responsibility. You have handled it well. You have helped shape the nature and character of the school. You may not believe that anyone ever heard your many complaints, but they were seriously considered and often led to further development. The great strength of any people lies in its youth. This is especially true of the Jewish people. That is why you are so important. Our expectations for you are high, both as individuals and as Jews. I am sure you will live up to them. Signed, A.I. Weinzweig, Chairman, School Board. I also know many members of that first class. I am confident in saying that many of you did live up to those high expectations because of forward-thinking people like Izzie Weinzweig. Jump forward to school year 1977-78. Carmi and I are now in 8th grade. Our class is deciding where we will go for high school. For me, the options are Mather High School, public, or Ida Crown, Orthodox. I was very clear with my parents. I have been in a conservative Jewish education system for 9 years, and I am not going to Ida Crown where I will be restricted in my Jewish observance. I had no idea that Izzie, Lila, and other parents and leaders were thinking along the same lines. It was time to start a conservative Jewish high school. So in the fall of 1978, the Solomon Schechter Secondary School came into existence with 30 students in the freshman class, sharing the Skokie building with the K through 8. The education we received in the 4 years it was open was extraordinary. We had limited athletic opportunities, but we had amazing academics. One of those was during the freshman year when Izzie brought Professor Oscar Miller from UIC to teach us about the importance of the Balfour Declaration, something we all remember to this day. Anybody remember the date? Except for Joel T. Bloom? November 2nd, 1917. And it wasn't only in formal education that Lila and Izzie were involved. Over the years, Izzie and Lila were very involved in Ner Tamid. Izzie was president of the congregation several times. Lila was a vice president at some point. In addition to official posts, they participated in social action events to support Israel and other educational opportunities. Izzie was on the committee that brought the check scroll to Ner Tamid. And of course, Izzie was also always one of the speakers at our Tikkun Leil Shavuot to talk about Israel and some of his war stories, etc. On Simchas Torah, for one of the Hakafot, they would sing, Izzie and Milt Schulman would sing Anu HaPalmach. And so it continued. At some point, Izzie became the editor of the Ner Tamid monthly bulletin. I am still not sure how I ended up as his proofreader and collaborator. I have a feeling that Lila may have had something to do with that. Izzie and I spent many nights in the synagogue office putting the bulletin together. Izzie would make himself a pot of regular coffee because he didn't like decaf. And I would make popcorn because Izzie couldn't have popcorn in the house when Lila was there. And so he enjoyed our monthly popcorn sessions. Occasionally, we would have to do some math calculations. And I would look to Izzie because I'm horrible at math. And Izzie would look at me and say, I'm a mathematician. I don't do arithmetic. A few years before Lila died, Izzie heard that my family was looking for a place to go for first Seder, so he invited my mother, Toby, my brother, Avrum, and me to their Seder. It was the first of several years of our families joining together, which continued even after Lila's death. It was like being with family. Even after we stopped coming for Seder, Izzie would come to our house during Chol HaMoed, where I would make him a Pesach birthday cake. Eventually, Ner Tamid and the Egalitarian Minyan began the process of merging. My mother and Izzie were on the committee, and they worked together to make sure that the merger was not only successful, but also reflected both congregations. After the merger, when we became Ner Tamid Egalitarian Minyan Ezra Habonim, aka NTEHEM, Izzie was still a presence in the synagogue. He was there to answer questions that would come up regarding the merger, the Torahs, the check scroll, the bylaws, and he was also always ready to tell one of his stories about the founding of the State of Israel or what he stole. Pre-pandemic, he was a weekly fixture at Shul, and that is how I want to remember him, proudly taking his aliyah while wearing his purple, blue, and white talit with the matching kippah that I made for him.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Meira Goldberg, and I'm Izzie's daughter. I've always thought that my sturdiness and resilience, my affability, and yes, my stubbornness come from my dad. And of course, from my grandpa David and my grandma Sarah, and from my auntie Reen, who I loved very much. I remember visiting my grandparents when I was little. I remember David's gnarled upholsterer's hands and the bottle of whiskey my dad always brought him, and Sarah's warm smile. I loved and adored my dad when I was little, and he loved and adored me. After my parents' divorce, he used to write 2 or 3 times a week, signing his letters with a cajillion or a trillion or some other made-up number of kisses. I remember the stories of his youth, of being a bricklayer for a time, of getting beat up on the way to school until he decided to fight back and beat the crap out of the bullies, of stealing across the Canadian border with a girl in the car during the war, of smuggling an anti-aircraft gun off a military base, of the refugee camp in France, of arriving in Israel on the morning the state was declared and singing Hatikva. I remember his stories of the War of 48, of taking out tanks with hand grenades with his design for improving their aerodynamic efficiency, ribbons tied to them. I remember his stories of Molotov cocktails, of joining the intelligence forces. I remember watching my dad shave with his electric razor. I remember that every morning my dad would not only daven but also do push-ups When we went to Israel with him in 2011, that is, he was 85, he was still putting his pants on standing up. I get not only my temperamental sturdiness from him, but also my physical strength, a blessing of my good health and solid body, which comes in handy for a flamenco dancer. I have always felt that my life in Spain in my early 20s shaped my life in a way that was very similar to my dad's time in Israel in his 20s. My dad gave me something of his passionate nature. My dad was a passionate person, yet also, especially as he aged, he was a very sweet and loving man. I remember how he and Lila would always hold hands in their older age, and whenever I visited, he would hold my hand too and caress my cheek. I felt a connection to him that was deeper than words. I felt in the constancy of his affection, his love and belief in me from when I was little. I think he was very proud of me and also of my beautiful family. He came to our daughter Amelia's high school graduation in 2015, to my nephew Val's bat mitzvah in 2016, to our daughter Ruby's college graduation in 2017, even though he couldn't make it to Amelia's 2019 college graduation. His memory was slowly slipping away. I want to take a moment to thank Lori, my partner and co-guardian since 2015. Thank you, Lori, for you have done so much more than me. I am grateful that caring for our dad has brought us together as sisters, and I know our bond will endure throughout our lives and, God willing, our children's lives. And I especially want to take a moment to thank BJ. BJ has taken care of my dad for almost a decade. He saved Izzie's life more times than I can count. Beyond that, BJ gave my dad good food, very important, and love and respect. He was a fierce defender of my dad's well-being in every way, and always dear, calling Izzie sir, which I know he really appreciated. BJ was among the few of us that Izzie continued to recognize, a sign of his love and trust in you, BJ. For many years, I would call my dad, and my dad was able to pick up the phone. But then there came a time when that was no longer possible. Then I would text BJ, and he would place the call to me from my dad's phone. You're part of our family, BJ, and our gratitude to you has no bounds. Izzie recognized me to the very end. I spoke with him this past Sunday. My brother Mike was there. Mike has been a constant and loving presence in Izzie's life. I said, "Aren't you glad Mike is there?" "Yes," he answered, adding, "When are you coming?" "Soon," I answered, "the first week of January." We signed off, as we always did. "I love you, Dad. I'll call you tomorrow." And he answered, "I love you too, sweetheart. I always enjoy your calls."
I will remember my papa for his big smile and easygoing personality. He was incredibly smart and had a big career as a math professor and was very engaged as a community builder and with a number of causes dear to his heart in the Chicago Jewish community and beyond. But he was able to balance all of this with an appreciation for the simple things in life and a laid-back character that all of us learned and benefited from. He was always happy to join a celebration, socialize with family and friends, and enjoy a good meal. He was enthusiastically warm and affectionate with his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Every time my siblings, Memes and Fry and I, and later my children, Bella and Meirav, would see Papa, he wouldn't let anyone pass him without dramatically asking for us to give him a big sloppy kiss, maybe 2 or 3. He enjoyed life, always indulging in celebratory treats, sometimes to the chagrin of my grandmother, who was always trying to keep him in shape. Papa and my grandma Lila were a perfect pair, and they loved each other immensely. I learned so much from their partnership. They worked together to devote themselves to the causes they cared about, and were always serving on Jewish education, synagogue, Israel-related, and other Jewish charitable boards, and attending and hosting meetings at their home. Papa was the founding president of Salman Schechter Day School and was very active in building the school in its early years. As a permanent Schechter substitute teacher beloved by generations, Grandma was his perfect counterpart. He was always steadfastly devoted to supporting Israel and was proud to have served in the Israeli army during Israel's War of Independence. We heard many stories growing up about his service and the many strategies he came up with to deal with difficult situations out in the battlefield. He especially took pride in clever stories about underdogs outsmarting others with more resources. He always had a story to share. And thank you to one of his friends today who brought an Ot HaKomemiyut that's resting on his casket, which commemorates veterans of the War of Independence. So it's very special to have that here today. Papa and Grandma were also devoted and active members of their shul community Ner Tamid, now melded into their beloved Ma Tovu Minyan, which is graciously leading all of the Shiva Minyanim. Papa served as president of Ner Tamid, and when the congregation dwindled, he worked tirelessly with Rabbi Bronstein to complete the sale of its campus to the current home of the Beis Yaakov School. This community was completely central to their Jewish lives, and we are so grateful for all of the incredible friendships and support that this community provided Papa in his later years, when it became harder for him to attend minyan and shul events in person. Papa and Grandma were steadfast supporters of disability inclusion throughout our lives, ensuring that my siblings, Tamima and Ephraim, could be full members of the Jewish community, and more recently with the founding of Moreshet Lila, in memory of my grandmother, a disability inclusion program at the Chicago Jewish Day School that supports my younger daughter Bella, along with other students with disabilities in the school. They espoused humility and generosity and eschewed luxury and pretension. They lived their lives with passion and authenticity. Papa was a beloved professor of mathematics at UIC for over 40 years and mentored many math teachers in Jewish day schools around Chicago, including my high school math teacher, in teaching what was known in the 70s and 80s as the new math, and later, I guess a lot of people are familiar with that, and later the intersection of math and computers, and he had so many computers at his house in all corners. He loved talking about math and helping me with my geometry homework. He loved talking to my husband Eli about the long journey of getting a PhD, and told many stories about his academic shenanigans, including dropping an important paper in a fish tank as an excuse when he wasn't prepared to turn it in on time. I think we've all heard that one a lot. That was Papa, brilliant and hardworking, but also quirky and goofy at the same time, always with a sense of humor. Papa took on so many projects, including designing the home that he and Grandma Lila lived in for 60 years, and ongoing home improvement projects, some unfinished with unexplained cords dangling from some of the walls for many decades. Like him, his house was always a work in progress. Papa and Grandma were incredibly well-traveled. In addition to regular travel to their beloved Israel, they were always going to many academic conferences abroad and bringing home interesting artwork and tchotchkes that filled their home with a sense of life, art, culture, and adventure. They relished new experiences and pursued these trips with intellectual curiosity and humility. I aspire to have these kinds of adventures with my own family. I have to mention also that Papa made an incredible signature salad dressing that I have never quite been able to replicate, no matter how hard I try. He loved spicy food and transmitted this to me, skipping over my mom. At the meals we shared with him, he always had a black pepper grinder and would grind and grind beyond what anyone else would think was reasonable. And we will certainly think of him whenever we add loads of hot pepper and hot sauce to our dishes. He was proud of all of his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and delighted in spending time with all of us whenever we could get together. We are so lucky to have him as our papa, and I feel blessed that my children, Merav and Bella, had the opportunity to get to know their great-grandfather, and through him, some of my grandmother's spirit as well. He found great joy in the fact that our older daughter, Merav Lila, was named after his beloved Lila. Papa and I sometimes disagreed politically, but he was always open for a good debate, and I learned from him the importance of leading a life of principle, dedication to Jewish life and community, and imbued with commitment to causes bigger than yourself. And like Meira, I want to conclude by recognizing Papa's amazing home care support team over the last decade, led by the exceptionally skillful and devoted BJ, and including Basil, Lucas, and John, and others over the years. In the disability community, we talk about how disability is not a set category, but a continuum. Some people are born with disabilities, while most of us acquire disabilities as we age. The common theme along the continuum is that people with all kinds of disabilities deserve to be able to access the supports they need to remain in their communities and lead full lives. This is something all of us should be able to have, but unfortunately, it's out of reach for too many. We are so, so grateful to BJ and his team for the tremendous support that you all provided Papa in his final years that allowed him to remain at home as healthy as possible and lead a life with dignity, connected with his family and community for the duration of his life. Papa led a long and full life, and we are so grateful for the time that we had with him. Yehi Zichro Baruch.
On behalf of all of the children, Michael and Meira, Lori, Ari, and Carmi, will now conclude with the Kel Malei Rachamim, which you can find translated on the second page of the booklets on the bottom. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein b'meromim, hamitzei menucha nechona al kanfei hashechina, b'malas kedoshim Tehorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Es Nishmas Avraham Yitzchak ben David Shehalach Liolamo Bavur Shebnei Mishpachto Nodrim Tzedakah Biad hazkaras nishmaso began eden tei menuchaso lachein bal harachamim yastirehu B'seiser kenafav leyalamim v'yitzror b'tzror hachayim es nishmaso Adonai hu Nachaloso v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen. That concludes the service.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the service here at the chapel. The interment will take place at Zion Gardens. For those who will be joining the family procession, we'll be lining up in front of our chapel We ask that you have your headlights and hazard lights on while in procession. The family will be sitting Shiva at the Weinzweig residence, 9711 Kilder Avenue. The times for Minyanim and Shiva times are on the service folder that you received when you arrived or on the website that you joined the live stream. If we can all rise and have all the grandchildren come forward and act as pallbearers and great-grandchildren come forward and act as pallbearers. And once we have left the chapel, we ask everybody to go immediately to their cars. Ladies and gentlemen, you may return to